Good morning, this is Shelby Law with the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Friday, June 11th, 2021. Impacts are shown here for the weekend. For today, the winds really die down compared to the last few days. There still are some lingering gusts in far western Nevada with low relative humidities. Saturday is pretty light in terms of wind, so we don't have any significant impacts highlighted for Saturday. And then on Sunday, some wind returns to mainly southern Nevada and southwest Utah and the Arizona Strip, as well as far western Nevada. Once we get into the first of next week, heat returns in a major way. Temperatures back up to near record. Yesterday, precipitation and lightning shown here. We did see some precipitation and cooler temperatures spread throughout the north, especially far western Idaho and far northern Nevada. Did receive some precipitation. Elsewhere across the geographic area, conditions were dry, but we did see some cooler temperatures move in with that cold front. Current fire activity shows continued new and emerging fires, particularly over Utah, and we've had some fires over western and southern Nevada in the last day or so as well. We do have 3 team fires right now: the Mammoth, the Pack, and the Bear in Utah. Precipitation images are shown here. The actual amount over the past 7 days showing some precip over far western Idaho and far northern Nevada with that latest cold front that moved through. However, looking at the past 30 days, percent of normal, still a pretty dismal picture, especially for Utah and southern Nevada, just much below normal for the time of year. A little bit better values over central and northeast Nevada. Our current ERCs are very high also across the state of Utah, with the generally warm and dry weather that we've had recently, especially with the southwest winds keeping things very dry across the state. Values are not as high over Idaho and Nevada. If we take a closer look at the seasonal trends here on the Manti-La Salle National Forest there in central Utah, we can see that the values have been right at that historical record for the past couple of months and reaching the 97th percentile right now. For the west, where we have had some fire activity in far western Nevada, those values have been on the increase for the past couple of weeks and are sitting right at the historical maximums for the time of year, but still below the 90th percentile. This morning's satellite imagery is showing the low still remaining off the Pacific coast, bringing a continued dry westerly flow. Today we will see somewhat mild temperatures today, but they're rapidly increasing starting today. Certainly not as cool as we had. This morning's satellite imagery is showing that low still off the Pacific coast, keeping temperatures somewhat cooler with higher relative humidities over Idaho and northern Nevada, but still very dry across Utah and southern Nevada. The winds die down today, but still very low relative humidities. Again, for today, we can see very dry air mass in place over the southern Great Basin with slightly higher relative humidities across the north and northwest. No high risk issued for today as the wind has died down significantly from yesterday. Taking a closer look, there still are some breezy winds over the central Idaho mountains and northern Nevada, but the relative humidity is higher up there, so it's not as concerning. Very dry air mass still over Utah and Nevada. On Saturday, we'll begin to see our temperatures increasing as the ridge starts to build back towards the Great Basin. Still continued very light winds as that low retreats a little bit, and we'll see temperatures increasing and relative humidity remaining very low. So for today, very light winds across the geographic area and continued low relative humidities into the low single digits across the south. On Sunday, the ridge really strengthens. We start to see a Four Corners type ridge developing with very warm temperatures and a dry air mass. No high-risk triggers issued for Sunday, although we will see, go to the next slide, some winds picking up across southern Nevada and southwest Utah on Sunday. Still maybe right below red flag warning criteria or high-risk criteria, but we'll be watching this to see if it increases much by Sunday. And then as that ridge builds in over the Four Corners, our temperatures are really going to increase, especially over Utah, where highs in Salt Lake are expected to be near 100 degrees by Sunday. 3-day precipitation totals really don't show any precip, maybe just a little bit of lingering precipitation today over the central Idaho mountains. Monday into next week, the ridge remains the dominant feature with very hot temperatures, especially over Utah. We do have high-risk triggers issued for the heat. Record heat is expected, highs in the low 100s like in Salt Lake. So the heat especially is most pronounced over the central and eastern Great Basin, where that ridge is centered over Colorado and the Four Corners area. This low pressure is going to remain off the Pacific coast for now. So the ridge still remaining the dominant feature. Heat continues to build into Tuesday. We do have a high risk still in place for the heat on Tuesday. And on Wednesday, the silver lining to all this, there's not much wind as this ridge builds into the Great Basin, but just a lot of heat and very low relative humidities. By Wednesday, with that ridge in place, we do start to see a little bit of moisture coming up underneath. You can see some high-risk triggers across the southwest for the lightning on Wednesday. By Thursday, we'll see some of that moisture into the southern Great Basin for a chance of some isolated thunderstorms across the south. And this moisture does look to remain possibly moving a little bit further northward on Friday, but that's a little bit far out to be getting into too much detail. But the big story is the wind's dying down, but now we've got the heat, low relative humidities, and possibly an increase in thunderstorm activity towards the end of the period. Precip not showing much in the next week. The extended forecast, June 18th through the 24th, pulls that bullseye of heat right over Utah with that high pressure ridge building in. And we do see an increase in the chance for precipitation, especially over the southwest. We'll see what this does for Utah. It could just mean mixed wet and dry thunderstorms, which would be very bad considering the current situation with our fuels and the drought in Utah. And this concludes today's fire potential briefing. Please check back tomorrow for the latest updates.